Welcome to the Attractions Group Podcast, Episode 3. My name is Ryan Suhr. With me, as always, is my co-host, Don Helbig. How you doing, Don?
I'm doing good. Ryan, looks like you were kind of like Johnny Cash over the last couple of weeks. You were everywhere.
Yeah, some of you might have wondered why Episode 3 didn't come out last week, and it's because I went on a bit of an excursion.
And where did you go?
Well, as pertaining to this particular program here, I went to several parks, some of the best in the nation, I might say. So stop one was up at Cedar Point, America's Rock and Roller Coast. Had a great time there. Fortunately, it was so hot here leading up to it that when we got there, it was one of those random Sandusky 72-degree days. So that was really fun. Day 2 was a little warmer, but that was an excuse to hang out in Soak City, which I think their Cedar Point Shores. I'm a couple years behind the times, but their water park is kind of underrated. I think it's really fun and unique. From there, we drove down to Columbus and flew to Washington, D.C., and from D.C., we drove to Doswell, where we did King's Dominion. So we did an evening at King's Dominion, then drove a little bit further down to Williamsburg, did 2 days at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, came back up to King's Dominion for a day and a half, and then ended by going to D.C. and walking the National Mall before flying back. I'd actually never been to D.C. before, so that was a really cool experience, too.
Yeah, it is a cool experience when you go there, and when you're visiting King's Dominion. I mean, on the road, so you might as well do it, right?
Yeah, everyone always told me that King's Dominion and Busch Gardens were so close to each other, but I thought that was an exaggeration, but it's not. They're about 50 minutes from each other without traffic. It was incredible. So if you visit one, you got to do the other. They're both great parks.
Now, while you're at King's Dominion, obviously you got to see one of my favorite attractions, the singing mushrooms. How are they?
The singing mushrooms are doing well. They said hi. That's cool that they brought back the nostalgia with that. That's really neat. They're adorable. And the singing mushrooms are like, it's like a carousel or a band organ. Like, you can't help but smile. If not, you're crazy. But but the cool part was, at all 3 parks we went to, we got to experience their summer festival celebration. So at Cedar Point, it was a little unique because they were coming off of the Frontier Fest, where they had like a late night thing so that was 21 and over at the Frontier part of town. But they were doing all the rehearsals for their Summer Fest, where they had their huge stage show on the Luminosity celebration stage, I think they call it now. But the cast was probably somewhere between 50 and 80. Their 150th celebration was really cool, and I think that this is kind of a mark off of that. So we got to see that and part of the parade, which was really, really neat. So then after that, we went to, King's Dominion didn't have anything going on at first, but we went to Busch Gardens, where they had their Summerfest, where their Summerfest is mainly about like food and stuff, and they had these special donuts that were really, really cool. Like we bought a bunch of them. Our favorite was a strawberry shortcake donut, which was really good. But Busch Gardens being a year-round park, essentially, they're open weekends during the really, really soft time of year. They got something going on almost at all times. But then we went back to King's Dominion. King's Dominion had one of my favorite celebrations, Grand Carnival. And it was really cool to see that at a different park. It was really nostalgic almost because, obviously, Kings Island, the park I hang out at most, isn't doing it this year because they're a little busy with the 50th stuff. But, their take on the parade was really cool. Their take on the show was really cool. It seemed to go over really, really well. There were people packed along the lines to see the parade. So, I don't know, Don. So, we were talking about this and how it was all about special events. So, we decided that today's podcast is going to be involving special events and how to drive revenue and per capita through them. So right off the bat,
let me ask you about let me ask you about the parks you went to with the special events as you bring that up. Was this something you were aware of was happening before you went there? Was it part of your planning because you knew it was there, that you wanted to see these events, or it just happened to be you're in the park and this is happening?
So it's a mixture of yes and no. The reason why we went to Cedar Point was because friends of ours went, and we went kind of in conjunction with them. But I will tell you that one of the deal breakers for going out east to Virginia was we wanted to see Carnival at King's Dominion. So yeah, as far as like what set us over the edge, because we looked at like going to Knott's Berry Farm or somewhere in Michigan or something like that. We knew we were going to do a second part of the trip, but when we saw we would have the opportunity to do Grand Carnival, that was a sales point for us.
Okay, now you talked about Cedar Point, and not necessarily, but did you look at that as kind of like added value for your trip, be able to see that?
So one of the things that I always thought was really cool about these special events, especially the ones that top off the night, is it gives you something to look forward to throughout the day. So for me, it's it's like, well, for example, like the parade at Grand Carnival, Dominion is open until 9 this year. The parade's at 8:30, so you've got that to look forward to top off your night, is to do the parade and the grand closing ceremony, or they had a name for it. I don't remember if Kings Island used it or not. But yeah, I think it was definitely an added value to it. It gave you something to look forward to all day. So even if lines were long and it was hot and stuff, you had something to kind of look forward to when the sun went down.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's obviously you've had your hand in a couple of special events here and there throughout the times. So let me ask you this. There are a lot of special events that are very, very successful. There are a lot of special events that are not very successful, that they go between a little does a lot and a big waste of money. And there's everywhere in between. So what do you always have to keep in mind when you're planning special events to really get the attention of guests? Like when they wouldn't visit otherwise. Like what do you do? Like what's the jumping off point with that?
Well, I think you have to determine the goals. What you're trying to accomplish with that event. Who's going to be the market that's going to be bringing guests that normally wouldn't come to your park. During that period. What's your budget for the event? You'll see different things. In different chats online or in social where they should have done this. They should have done that. No matter what park you go to, there's those kind of comments about events, but it's not a bottomless pit. Everybody's got a budget, so your budget determines what you can do and to what extent. You need to brand the event. You have to have a name that's going to catch attention with everybody. So that's your starting point when you're looking at an event: is how are you going to make it stand out? What's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? With it, is it an awareness play? Is it to drive attendance? There's all different things. Everybody's going to have a different KPI there, what they're looking to do when they do these events.
Yeah, I agree with that. So do you think that in that instance, there's a certain advantage to like pigeonholing your event? Like, for example, Grand Carnival is a celebration of different cultures from around the world. And, the name, although it was come up by, a marketing team, it actually means something. Do you think that has an advantage over having just a summer fest when you do various activities celebrating the summer? Because you can brand it your own way?
Yeah, I think when you brand it your own way, you make it your own, kind of a thing. It's not this, different festivals, different, like whether it's a beer festival, food and wine tasting, it does happen all over the place. You have to make yours stand out. You have to make it your own, make it different. So everyone's going to want to come to your event and not just the one that's happening down the road.
So Don, it seems like with all these special events, there's always some sort of focal point to look forward to. It's Cedar Point, it was for the 150th especially, was the parade and then the show, and then Kings Island's 50th is the fun fireworks and 50 at the end of the night. Busch Gardens had weekend fireworks, which was really exciting. And then Grand Carnival obviously is the parade. Would you say that having some sort of focal point, like something in particular that's unique to the event, is important when it comes to designing an event and marketing the event?
Yeah, I mean, you want to have that clear idea what the goal of the event is, know who's going to be interested in attending, who the target audience is. But after all that, you still have to have that one key takeaway. You have to know what that's going to be. So when your guests leave at the end of the night, there's that one thing that is just memorable for them. So yeah, the key takeaway, it's very important to have that in mind when you're creating an event.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, when you're deciding the theme of an event, what are some of the components that you look at? I mean, is it basically everybody sits down and comes up with various ideas and then you vote on it, or is there more to it than that, or how does that work?
Well, every park is going to be a little bit different in how they're structured, and who has implemented that. Sometimes it comes from a corporate entertainment team. Sometimes it's the local park level where you're working on those kind of things. So everybody's going to be a little bit different in that. But the key components that you have to have in there. Again, you have to have that goal. What are you trying to accomplish here? How long is the run going to be? How are you going to create urgency for that event? How are you going to attract an audience? Typically doesn't come to your park. Maybe they're not a fan of roller coasters and water parks, and so you have to have something different to get them to come to your park. So those are all things you have to talk about, and then it comes down to that branding, the name, and just executing after that point, after all the details have been finalized.
Yeah, and one thing that I always kind of noticed is that with special events, sans your beer festivals and stuff, they parks in general have done a really good job of, like, you got fireworks for the teens and above, you got a scavenger hunt for the kids, you've got entertainment for everybody. So taking a multi-pronged approach when it comes to like a family-oriented event is really a good thing to have in mind. And then when you're coming up with your theme, that's a good thing to remember as well, because that you can kind of build around that in some instances. So
yeah, I mean, you want to have something like that because you got like the families, maybe they've got younger kids. It's a food and wine tasting kind of an event. Well, that's not for the kids, so you have to have something to keep them interested as well if they're going to come with the adults, the parents.
Yeah, I mean, you could do a wine scavenger hunt, but I don't think the kids could pronounce Pinot or any of those. So when you're designing an event, when you're developing an event, what are some of the components that are important to making the event successful? So we discussed that you come up with a theme that you think would be intriguing to whatever demographic you're looking at. Let's say you come up with an event and it's going to be, let's say, like a motorcycle themed event. So like, dads love motorcycles generally, kids all love motorcycles. So where do you go from there? It's June 1st and the event's going to be the end of July. So you have enough time to really push it out. So let's talk about like marketing, PR, advertising, internal signage, and so on. Like just generally off the top of your head, build a marketing plan for it. Not to put you on the spot or anything.
No, I think you have to do it like you would if you were opening a new ride, a new water park attraction, a new restaurant, a new live stage show. You have to take that same kind of an approach. And as a park team, with all the different department kind of take the approach that if this is the only thing we were doing this year, how would we go about it? So it's the same approach that you use for those other things with new ride launches. It's just a shorter term event. You do want to get in front of it a little bit. If it's a returning event, you can do it within like 30, 45 days out because guests are familiar with that. But if it's a brand new event, you really want to be about 90 days in front of it to let everybody know what you're doing. You have to make sure when you're talking about these different events that you're going to be able to have a team on your entertainment side with the decor and everything to create an atmosphere that represents the theme. If you're going to have Mardi Gras, you can't have it, just nothing else around it. You just have something going on in the streets. You have to have the buildings decorated. You have to have the fencing, all those other kind of things to kind of fit in with the atmosphere to create, so the event, it takes you in a different world really when you're doing those events.
Yeah, so what you're basically saying is that part of the run into it is an immersive experience. If you were going to do a motorcycle event, it would be cool to have motorcycle decor. Not just cool, but it would be almost critical in a lot of cases. Especially if you want to make it something memorable and hopefully repeatable in the future. Would you say that having a successful event kind of in the back of your mind is to have a repeatableness to it? Like, you had Carnival for what was supposed to be 2 years in a row. Obviously, a lot of money goes into development. So when you do these events, do you have that in mind sometimes?
You do. You do want it to be more than a one and done type of a thing. There's a big investment, from the decor to costumes to developing any kind of shows, the menus or food items. There's a lot involved. So you definitely do want to plan that it's going to be around, for the long run, not just something that's one and done.
Yeah, and it's funny because you keep on bringing up these points, and then it's triggering things in my head. And hopefully, if you're listening at home, it's triggering it for you because you mentioned food. So that's another aspect of the park that can be involved. It's Grand Carnival it's a parade and it's a stage show, but it's a food thing too. it's food from around the world. And for the 50th stuff at Kings Island, it's the flight commander fries and so on. Busch Gardens had the donuts that were all kind of summer bright color related. So do you think that food is creeping its way into being part? I mean, obviously, like food has been kind of a staple for events for a while, but do you think that broadly speaking, from a macro standpoint, food is becoming part of an attraction that's almost indispensable?
Very much so. I think you're getting to that point now when you go to different parks, you're remembering that burger you had at a certain location, or the chicken tenders, whatever it is, the food item that's as memorable as one of the rides that you rode when you go home, and you just remember that. And when you come back the next time to the park, you want to try that again. You already have it earmarked where you're going to go during those events, and what's going to be your food of choice for those events. So yeah, it's very much becoming a part of the overall experience, not only for special events, but just visiting a park every day. But you talk about all these different components and things and why you do it. A lot of these parks, I mean, it's a mature industry now. I mean, a lot of these parks have been around 35, 40, 50, 70, plus years, 100 years, with someone like Cedar Point. You want to have a situation where when you have these 2-3 week, month-long runs with these special events, it's an opportunity for guests to see the park like in a way that they haven't before. So to give them a reason to come. They might have come in May and rode their favorite rides. They'll come back in August and ride their favorite rides, and that was what they were planning to do. But if you dump something in between with a special event, they got to come back and try it.
Yeah, I agree.
And then they want to do it again the next year. So it becomes like a wintertime event. It just becomes that thing that you plan, that you're going to go experience this event at that park because you went there, you had a great time, and you can't wait to do it again the next year.
How do you determine the length of an event?
Well, you have different things that are going on in the season, depending on if you're a year-round park or you're seasonal. You're pretty much Memorial Day, Labor Day is kind of your key point. You want to schedule the time, obviously, when, the kids are out of school and all the families can make their trips there from within 2-3 hours away, 4 hours away, based on where you are. But, so middle of the summer, you kind of want to do it, middle of June, end of July, somewhere in that range is usually the optimal time to do events.
Yeah, but this is another thing that kind of has popped in my head, especially this year, because this has been a really good year for events. And let me use, and I'm not picking on anybody here, but let me use the example of Holiday World, okay? So they've got a drone show most of the summer this year. And I've seen, obviously, Kings Island's done its drone show, and I've seen the one at Dollywood, both of which are amazing. And I'm sure that the Holiday World one is as well. I haven't seen it yet. So how do you manage the expectations where if you do a drone show for 3 or 4 weeks, let's say core summer, and then you don't do it next year, or you do something else, how do you manage it as far as like, because you've always got to do better every year, it seems like. Like, how do you manage that? I mean, do you treat each year uniquely, or,
If it's not going to be the same exact kind of show, you have to have something that at least, rivals it in a different way. So just always have something going on. And if it isn't going to be a nighttime show, maybe it's something that takes place in the middle of the day. But just you always want to have something that's going to be a reason to come other than just the normal days. You talked about the timeline too. If you're opening a brand new roller coaster and your daily operations around Memorial Day, you don't want to start the first week of June with a special event typically, because you're still going to be coming primarily to ride that new attraction that you have. So you want to move it a little bit later in the year. So that plays a role too, Ryan. It's not always, it's a staple. You have to do it these same weeks every year. What else do you have going on? What's happening early in the season? What's going to after Labor Day? So you want to kind of plan around that as well too. That's why sometimes you're not always going to see the same week run every single year.
Yeah, I mean that's always one thing that kind of scared me, is that if you can't do the same event every year, especially if it's an anniversary year or whatever, for year 152, 153, when it was like, yeah, that's cool, but they had this cool parade a few years ago that they're not doing anymore. Like I've always been afraid that the gain for this year would take away from the next year's. But I guess memory is so short term now that it's on to the next thing. You're opening the next roller coaster, the next food item, the next restaurant.
Maybe it's like I talked about middle of the day. Maybe it's a new stunt show. It's something like that takes place maybe it's not the closer at the end of the night, but it's going on somewhere else. So you just have to do it in a different way if you're not going to bring back the same exact kind of an event. Just do it differently, but do it well.
Okay. So, I mean, my next question that I had prepped for you, which you seem to like really beat up with a lot of really good information answering my other questions, was, when you're developing a marketing plan, you mentioned a lot about, picking your demographics, deciding what you want to do with it. The time on the calendar is important. The fear of missing out, the eminent dates are important. Is there anything else you want to add that's really key to having successful special events? Is there anything else in mind?
Well, you just have to have everybody aligned in your park, everybody on the same page, everybody ready to go when you hit that date when the event begins.
So, how critical is public relations when it comes to special events?
It's very important. It's a key component in all your marketing efforts for it. You got to keep that top of mind awareness, especially when you have an event that's 2-3 week run. You can't have any missed opportunities. You have to get in front of it. If it's a brand new event coming, you want to start talking about that maybe 90 days out, 65 days out. If it's a returning event within 30 days out, you want to make sure that if it's a stunt show, you bring the media out and let them interview the performers, those kind of things. If it's based around food, have them come out, talk to your chefs, and do food tasting with them. If it's a nighttime show or parade, invite the media out, give them like an area where they can watch it themselves, without, being part of the big crowd, but just give a nice space dedicated to them, a VIP area, maybe you can call it, for them. But you have to make sure that the media knows. Also, there's so many different components of this that, works for the media that allows them to really tell a story. Not just so much that you're doing this on these dates, but the story behind it, and why guests will come out and experience that event. So it's very, very important about it whenever you're doing a special event, the PR end.
Yeah, yeah, and one of those things that's kind of that I've kind of noticed as far as being a student of PR for the past 20 or so years, especially in the industry, is that a good PR person can get 3 or 4 cameras out there to cover your parade or your stage show. A great PR person can get them to do a story on a performer whose mother was also a performer, or two twins that are in a show, or anything like that. Uh, you know, one thing that I've noticed, that like with the special events, you can't downplay the PR at all. You need to have just every camera, every newspaper, every magazine, every gas pump, just everybody out there just covering this stuff, because again, it's for 2 weeks. So you can't miss it. It's almost a disservice to the people who would want to see it that don't know about it.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to, as a PR person, it's not a pitch about the event; it's telling the stories about the event, why it's important, for their TV audience or their, readership, why they need to know about this event. So you have to do it from that angle too, and talk about, what makes it relevant, so it does get that, the media is coming out to cover it for you.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, we're going to do a whole podcast on, PR in today's world, but one thing that you and Mefford and, all the PR people that I know have always taught me is it's all about finding the story in it. Because, you know, you've mentioned that as a digital content provider, you're a storyteller. So is a journalist, so you're kind of like a journalist for your own company. But, you know, when you've got Channel 5 or whomever, your Channel 32, whoever, we're not just a Cincinnati podcast, but the fact that, there's a parade is a story, but the fact that the parade started last week is not. But the fact that Sally's in the parade for the 50th and her mother was in the parade for the 25th, now that's a story. And then you got two for one right there. You got to do your homework
Exactly.
on it.
You do, but I mean, like I said, it's just like a new ride. When you're doing PR, there's the pre-launch, there's the launch, and then there's the sustain. So you have to sustain the awareness for that event. You just can't, say the event just started, on to the next thing. You got to keep it going. You got to keep finding ways. There's always going to be a story out there somewhere, like you talked about with a performer, or maybe there's certain food items, behind the scenes of getting, set up for a parade. That's a great visual. Is always showing what it takes to get the parade ready to go. Those kind of things. But in addition to PR too, you also have to look at your social media approach, especially the paid side. You have to target certain audience. Who's that going to appeal to, and make sure that that's part of your target audience when you're doing paid social as well. Your organic side, those guests, they've been hearing about it for a long time. They're going to know. So you have to get outside of your neighborhood with the paid efforts as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that I always thought was intriguing was that special events such as like Christmas events in particular, you see a lot of Holiday in the Park, Winterfest, and so on logos on people's shirts and sweatshirts and stuff. Um, do you see short-term events as a good opportunity to drive per capita spending?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Guests become immersed in the experience, and they want to take a part of it home with them. What better than a piece of merchandise, whether it's a T-shirt, a hat, bracelet, necklace, any of those kind of things, lapel pins. So there's always that opportunity. They want to take a piece of that home with
Yeah,
them.
and I guess it kind of translates over too. You can buy the shirt now, but if you come in 2 weeks, you may not be able to.
Correct.
Yeah. So, what would you say are some of the critical components for if you have a person that's responsible for or part of the responsibilities for in-park per capita spending, and they're concerned about special events? What are some of the components that they can focus on in order to drive up per capita spending, generally speaking, for special events?
Well, you're trying to drive the urgency to come. For it. That it's different than anything else you're going to experience this summer. This winter, this fall. In the fall, whatever it is. So you want to drive that urgency to get guests who normally would not have planned to visit to come. That's the best way to do it, and then have different things around the park, whether it's the food, the merchandise, even games. Just different ways like that is just not there during the normal operating days when there's not that event going on.
Yeah, we're going to have to do a podcast with somebody who's on the merchandise side at some chain to talk about how you design shirts and clothing and hats and gloves and that will actually sell, like how you make that determination. I think that would be a really cool subject matter. Um,
Well, the one thing with events though that really helps to drive up that in-park spending is that it's a limited time. So you only have that short window to go. You only have that short window to try those foods. That short window to get that short window to play those games.
okay, and I something that kind of popped in mind for those who are not very industry adjacent when we're talking about per capita spending as a general factor. And per capita spending is spending within the park that does not include admission. So we're talking about when you buy food, t-shirts, merchandise, upcharge attractions, just anything sans probably parking and definitely admission. So what as per capita spending as a factor is if there's 100 people in the park and $1,000 is spent, you divide the two, and that's how you get your per capita number.
Right.
Excuse me. Yeah. So
that's a big thing coming up. Special events. I really do feel that's over the next several years, that's going to be the trend in the industry. I think you're going to see a big slowdown of the new 20, 30, $40 million rides. I mean, they'll still be out there, but not like they were 10, 15 years ago. Right now, it's all about experiences. That's what guests want, different experiences, and that's a perfect fit for these special events because it's giving guests exactly what they're asking for.
yeah, so we've been talking a lot about special events in terms of 2 week stuff. What about the repeating stuff? What about your Halloween and your Christmas and stuff like that? That stuff is cyclical. It's very predictable. Often the stuff is upgraded over the years, but it's very similar to, if not identical, from one year to the next. How do you keep that fresh?
You do have to change the track shows and things around a little bit with that, but it's also it's a short enough run that for a lot of guests in those windows, you're talking more weekend operation. It's not where you're coming, any day of the week for it. So I think that helps, as well to keep it, something that's, becomes a tradition for families to go to the Halloween. It becomes a tradition to go to the winter event. So that's why you can continue to roll out pretty much the same thing every year. It's really the tradition that you're building upon.
What would you say that there's anything a park could do that would influence it becoming a family tradition and not a one and done?
Well, I think they just have a great time, when they go to these different events. And it just becomes that thing that you do. It's almost, in the summer, it works the same way, kind of a thing where, started going there as a child. Your parents took you there, and it's there, and then they're taking their kids there. It's just one of those kind of things. But it separates itself from the other times of the year when doing those events, with Halloween, with the winter events. Uh, but it may not be that thing because of the operating calendar's a lot shorter. You're gonna it's an urgency there. You have to do it within 4 to 6 weeks, or you miss out on it.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because you and I have a mutual friend named Bill Balfour who used to be head of entertainment for Paramount Parks when they were a thing. And I remember he's loaded with good advice. We'll have to have him on for some reason at some point. But he he told me that I don't remember how this came up, but he said the second half of July is into the end of daily operations is always so busy for theme parks because in his belief it was like you get to that point and it's like, oh, we haven't visited there. The school starts in 3 weeks. We better go. So when it comes to you know May, June, oh, we've got all summer or whatever, and then the end of the barrel seems to be kind of hitting you, and you start doing that. So it's almost like you kind of mentioned this. Summer almost is its own event. And I guess that's where like Busch Gardens Summerfest or Summer Fair or whatever they're calling it kind of comes into play. Use an excuse to get it in front of people because you have all summer on June 1st. You don't have all summer on July 30th though. Yeah.
That's right. It slips way fast, and schools seem to start earlier every year, mid-August. So you do start to run out of time. But yeah, once you get past the 4th of July, the clock's ticking on how much time you have left before you get to Labor Day, and then parks start to their fall events.
Do you think that's a marketing opportunity? Get to the park before it's too late?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you definitely want to put out those messages that there's only X number of days left, to visit this summer, or last chance, or last splash of summer. Those kind of different things is something that you as a marketing team, you definitely want to create that urgency to drive that attendance the second half of the summer.
Oh, that's cool. So, personal question. So, with the exception of events that you've been involved with, and you've been involved with some really special events that Robbie Knievel and Walinda's and, your own Grand Carnival, what's your favorite theme park event lifetime that you've been to that you did not have an involvement with whatsoever, that you just visited and enjoyed it?
That I did not have an involvement with?
Mm-hmm.
I would probably have to say the Christmas event at Magic Kingdom was one of my first, winter events that I went to before working in the industry. So it, I just like the way that was created there.
Yeah. Everything Disney does in general is that's the 10 bar. That's the race bar.
Part of that. Now, a big part of that for me was my daughter was, 6, 7 years old at the time.
Yeah.
So the perfect age. So that was a big part of why that was a favorite for me. Just, the enjoyment and, the excitement, everything that she had to see these characters, dressed up for, the holidays and things like that. So, but that one kind of stands out because of the, just the connection with, going with my family and just seeing how, she enjoyed it.
Yeah, kind of visiting a park or doing anything like that with somebody for their first time is like kind of seeing it through their eyes. I think there's something special about that, and that probably plays back into the whole family tradition thing. Once little Billy turns 4 and he's old enough to start riding rides, you've ridden the little wood coaster a million times, but to ride with him for the first time is like riding it for the first time yourself in a lot of cases.
Yeah, but a lot of places, back when I had, season pass, Kings Island and some other, parks around the country, and I was traveling around, you did in the fall, middle of October, early October, you were done. There wasn't the holiday events. There wasn't the Halloween events. It was just normal operation, into September and early October, and you were done. So you didn't really have that when I was growing up and going to theme parks all over the place. And it really didn't, really start to take off until around, you had the Winterfest with, Kings Island starting in the 80s and that, but there still wasn't a lot of that up until around 2000, and parks started really getting into the Halloween season, and then kind of went.
Yeah, I think Kings Island's first forte in Halloween was 2000, right, with Fear Fest, or did they do something fallish in between back in the Winterfest days, the original Winterfest days.
That's pretty much it. That was the branding of an event would have been, 2000 with Beer Fest. But then, you start, Universal always did their thing. Knott's always did their thing, with Halloween Haunt up there. But it wasn't, everywhere. Everybody wasn't doing it. So it was more, isolated a number of parks that had those fall and those winter events up until, about 20 years ago.
So why do you think that the trend is leaning towards special events rather than large rides? Because that's well, what you're saying is indisputable right now. Back in 2000 through 2005 or so, quite the opposite was true. What do you think's changed?
I think what's changed is the industry has matured. Like we talked about earlier, the parks are, they're older, they're 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 plus years old now. So you need some different experiences. You need to give, people a different reason to come. Sure, they'll go that one or two times, to do what they always did, but you need to just keep it fresh, keep it interesting. And that's what people like nowadays. They like those experiences. They like spending time with family and friends and just doing food tastings, wine tastings, craft beers. So it's kind of, what it's evolved into, not just with parks, but everywhere.
Yeah, I agree. And also, sometimes you just tap out on it. When you got roller coasters that are 430 something feet tall or whatever King Ka is, and Formula Rosa and stuff, and it's like, do you want to go faster? Do you want to go higher? I mean, maybe someday, but right now it's almost like that's a lot of money for a very small demographic. Like I said, I don't, you get a lot of enthusiasts that say like, enthusiasts make up 0.002% of the population. It's like, yes, members of the American Coaster enthusiasts and so on make up that percent of the general population of a park. But obviously, there's a market for giga coasters and stuff, or else parks wouldn't build them. It's obviously there. But at the same time, is there a market for a 500-foot coaster that costs $65 million? Like, how are you going to amortize that? Let's talk to the accounting department about that one. You know, so yeah, you're right, and especially, I mean, maybe even now with like kind of the price of steel's been, I mean, long before the inflation problem we're having, the price of steel's been going up for quite a while. So you're getting less for more money. Maybe that has an influence as well. When you start getting quotes, but I don't think the day and age of the roller coaster, the large roller coasters, anywhere near dead. I think that it's alive and well, but I think that there's a trend, and I think it'll swing in the opposite direction eventually. But I think that the two things have really imprinted themselves on each other. For example, you know, Cedar Point spent was 25 million on Top Thrill Dragster in 2004, and that was considered an insane amount of money at the time. They're on special events now, but rides like that are kind of their signature still. Millennium Force and Rougarou and so on. But in 10 years, if we're back to building large roller coasters, then part of that budget's going to go to special events. You know.
Yeah, and it will. And yes, today, they've been going to these parks for years. They like to experience those different times of the year in a different way. That's what the summer events do for you. That's what the fall events do. What the winter events do. It allows you to experience your favorite parks in a different way, and it brings a different audience as well too.
Awesome, cool. Well, some good thoughts on special events. I hope I certainly learned something. So I hope that all of our listeners did as well. So Don, on to the news. We mentioned this park before. You want me to go first?
No, go ahead. Dollywood.
Dollywood.
Named America's top theme park by TripAdvisor. It's ranked #1 in the U.S. and #8 in the world in the 2022 Traveler's Choice Best of the Best Awards. You've been there. Your thoughts?
Well deserved. Dollywood does a lot right. Part of it's inherent because them being in the mountains and stuff gives it a beautiful setting, but I really like the personality behind the place. One thing I like about Dollywood is that you can go into 10 different gift shops and there's 10 different style of stuff in there. I feel like a lot of the more corporate parks have the same stuff in every shop, but it's like shopping's an experience there. Their rides are all fantastic. Their shows are very, very, very good. Well deserved. What are your thoughts on it?
Like you said, well deserved. Like I said, to do a lot of things right. Great setting. And when you think about it, they got shows, they got rides, they've got food. There's not that one thing that you know, dominates it. You know, where you're thinking, oh, it's a roller coaster park. Oh, it's this park. It's a little bit of everything.
So Don, without saying train, what's your favorite ride at Dollywood?
Without saying train, I would. You messed me up. I think you know, I'm trying to think here because I like a lot of the, you know, they're all fun. They're things that I can do
They're
together.
all so unique, it's difficult to decide.
Yeah, I
Let
mean,
me answer this because this might help. I would say that my favorite ride there is Mystery Mine. I think that's so unique and fun. Close second would be Lightning Rod. You know?
yeah. Well, I would go carousel
Okay.
too, right by the train down there,
Yeah.
and they got the little bear ride. I think that is so cute, adorable. I love it. I ride it every time I can.
Yeah, that ride's cool. I like how they buck back and forth. That's kind of fun. Um,
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's like I said. When you go there, it's just, you know, I love the shows. You know, I make sure I catch the shows when I go there. So I'm not necessarily going there specifically for rides. I'm going there for the overall experience.
yeah, the show, it was funny because I didn't realize the shows aren't like 25 minutes long like they are everywhere else. So I had reservations at Aunt Granny. Well, not reservations, but when they were going to text you, and they said it would be about 35 minutes. I'm like, oh, this show's about to start right now. So I went into the drive-in theater near Lightning Rod, and
Yeah,
I can't think of what the show's called, but it was like based on a drive-in movie theater, and like it's old and decrepit, and then they go kind of back in time and tell this whole story through song as to what happened to the theater, and eventually it shut down, and then it comes to present time, and they reveal that the two old people at the beginning were actually the people that were met there in the younger years and stuff, and he implies that he bought the theater because he takes the clothesline off and throws it. It was like an hour and 5 minutes long, and I was so hungry. That's all I could think about. But but I tell you what they brought that back for years, and it's won some. I don't know if it was golden ticket, but it was some sort of award, and it's so worth it. The performers there are so good. The shows there are so well done. Dollywood is a great model for other parts. I heard Silver Dollar City might actually beat it out. I've never been there, but I've heard it's very similar to Dollywood, and people really like that too. But congratulations to the team over at Dollywood. TripAdvisor obviously is a wide array of people, so it's not just enthusiasts and it's not just families. So very well deserved. But speaking of Dollywood, if you're going to be that successful and win these awards, you're going to have somewhere for people to stay. So they finally announced, about a year ago that they were going to be doing some resort expansions, and they just announced that they're going to do a $500 million expansion. So this is a little bit more detail. Dolly Parton announced the construction of the Heart Song Lodge and Resort on Thursday, the first project in a $500 million investment campaign by Dollywood Parks and Entertainment for the next decade. Scheduled to open in 2023 in Pigeon Forge, 5-story, 302-room lodge featuring sprawling indoor-outdoor pool complex, 26,000 square foot indoor-outdoor event space, located right next to Dreammore. Don, you ever stayed at Dreammore before?
I have.
Have you?
Very nice. Yeah, very nice. But that whole area down there has really exploded. I can remember my first trip there was 1993, 94 range, and it wasn't the destination spot in Pigeon Forge that it is today. So now, I mean, you go there and there's so much to see, so much to do. You can't do it all in one week. It's become that place you stay 6-7 days, and that's exactly what they need there is a resort like this.
Yeah, it was funny because when Dolly when she partnered with Hershen Entertainment, her goal was always to just create jobs in that East Tennessee town near Sevierville, and boy has she, because Dollywood employs thousands of people, and then the resorts probably employ hundreds each. So good job on that. Dreammore, I've never stayed there. I walked through it when it first opened to see it, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's got. Did you know about Dolly Parton's Legacy song? Have you heard about that?
Tell me about it.
So at the Dreammore Resort, there's actually a box that's locked up, and it's you know, in a display case, and it's got a song that Dolly Parton had written, and she wants it open when she passes away, and she wants that song to be her legacy, and that's all we know about it right now. So you can see it on display there somewhere. But yeah, so yeah, that's really exciting.
All right. Well, Ryan, the MC Universal CEO, he's talking about the demand for Universal parks this summer historic. He said they're well above the 2019 pace. Still not getting a lot of international travel. Still not getting a lot of travel from coast to coast due to the airlines, the cost of flying, the gas prices, but still having a great year, great demand there.
That's amazing to hear. I was particularly concerned with the Florida parks when it came to coming off COVID. Not just Florida, but Southern California, ones that really draw international visitors because COVID hit different countries in different ways, and there were different perspectives on how cautious you should be about it. I kind of figured that international travel would be kind of soft, but it seems like at least super regional travel kind of made up for it, at least in the Orlando area. This is your article you're reading is from clickorlando.com. But it looks like that demand was pretty inelastic, and as soon as people were able to go, they went. So good for NBC Universal. All right, all right. So other side of the country in Maine, we're going north from Orlando. There's a proposed $1 billion patriotic park, which will. This is the one thing we know about it. All right. It'll have a 1,776 foot tall flagpole. Don, would you drive to Maine to see a 1,776 foot flagpole?
Well, I went to Casey, Illinois to see the world's largest wind chime. So, yeah.
Was that wind chime 1,776 feet tall? Because I was with you and I remember it being about 200 feet tall.
It was not, but yeah, I mean, that's going to be up there. So, you got to wonder about the flight patterns and things like that, how that's all going to work there with something being that tall. But, it'll be one of those things that, people do travel just to take a look at.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Maine obviously has its own, travel destination for the seafood and things like that. And it's really beautiful in the fall. I'm still like, when I put this article down, I thought like, oh, that's tall. But do you think that's as tall as One World Trade Center, the new World Trade Center, which is also 1,700? So in order to not look ridiculous, you're going to have an American flag that's approximately 1 square mile. I'm calculating off the top of my head, which is incorrect. Just imagine how big the base of this flagpole is going to have to be. Just imagine, like, how big around is it going to? It's going to have to be like 10 or, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but it's going to be like 10 or 15 feet around, because if you get a good wind gust, this flag's just got to pull so hard. And if you look at like the flag in front of your local like shopping mall or whatever, it usually has a slight bend to it just from being pulled in a certain direction over time. Just imagine one that's that tall. Incredible.
Yeah, but it's definitely going to be the dominant landmark in that area of Maine.
Yeah, that's gonna. There's gonna be news stories where people try to get them to take it down because they don't get the sun in their neighborhood anymore. It's almost like a cartoon-worthy thing.
All right, moving on. Super Nintendo World now planned to be 2023 at Universal Hollywood. So they kind of narrowed down that time frame for its version of Super Nintendo World.
Yeah, that's super exciting. It's coming to Orlando too, but my understanding is it's coming to Epic Universe, so it'll be a little while. But I grew up with Nintendo, so that's super exciting. Universal Studios Hollywood is so far away that it's never entirely been on my bucket list. But I guess once that opens, that's going to put me over the edge of wanting to go out there. I think that's really exciting. Universal has a lot going on, as far as they were kind of like Disney Junior for all throughout the 90s and so on. And now they're kind of like finding their own footing as far as kind of sitting on the same shelf. So as far as this property that they're excited about doing and putting a ton of money into it and developing their own technology, it's going to be really, really cool. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be pretty cool, especially, if you're Nintendo fans. So yeah, I always like those kind of themed areas like that. They always look good.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the year-round park, so Shanghai Disneyland Reopens after 3-month closure due to COVID. This is coming from USnews.com. More than 1,000 visitors streamed in on Thursday as Walt Disney Company's Shanghai Disney Resort theme park opened after a closure of 3 months with face masks and social distancing the order of the day. It felt like us in 2020, didn't it?
Yeah, and it does bring back what we saw in 2020. We're getting hopefully near the end of seeing these extended closures, the need to have face masks, the social distancing, those kind of things. It's getting better, but clearly we're not out of the woods yet. Whether it's the United States or in other countries.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we mentioned before that different countries had different goals and different outlooks on the COVID thing. I couldn't fathom Disney World closing for 3 months or Disneyland closing for 3 months because of a COVID outbreak. I think that we're well beyond that at this point. Um, but yeah, glad to see it reopen. Hopefully, this is the last time because that costs them a fortune every single day that that park is closed. So.
Yeah, and by now, there's a playbook for that where there wasn't in 2020 for anybody.
Mhm.
So now there's been a playbook developed how you handle it, how you handle reopenings, and gradually get back to normal operation.
Yeah.
Speaking of the embattled Walt Disney Company chief executive Bob Chapek, he got an extension for an additional 3 years. Thoughts on that?
So, it seems like a lot of people have different thoughts on Bob Chapek for different reasons. There's a lot of like social justice things as well as there were concerns about the Disney parks themselves by hardcore park goers that have a different perspective on some of the things they're doing. Um, the fact of the matter is, at least from the park standpoint, they're putting up the right numbers. If there was an opportunity to get rid of him and they wanted to, they most certainly would. In fact, it's rather easy to get rid of a CEO. You can vote him out with the board, but they think he's doing a good job and he's putting up the record numbers. Now, Disney stock has been down along with the rest of the market, but yeah, Chapek is checking the boxes that the board hired him to do, and he's going to have 3 more years to accomplish what he set out to accomplish. All right, so Wonder Woman Flight of Courage. It's got an opening date. This is at Six Flags Magic Mountain. It's going to open July 16th. That's a single rail Raptor coaster from Rocky Mountain Construction, RMC. Um, the RMC is known for wood and steel coasters like Magic Mountain's own Twisted Colossus. So this is going to be their second RMC coaster. It's going to be a little bit longer than Jersey Devil at Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey. You've been on many RMCs, Don?
Been on some RMCs, never been on a single rail. Looking forward to experiencing that at some point in the foreseeable future. I've had roller coaster enthusiasts who have been on those, and they love it. They talk about how smooth it is, the transitions and things. So looking forward to, like I said, experiencing that myself. What I like about this, you talk about it's the tallest at 131 feet. For me, I'm more interested in it's a longer ride, 3,300 feet. It's going to have speeds up to 58 miles per hour, which is pretty fast, really, when you're going through a lot of different twists and turns on that. An 87-degree first drop, 3 inversions. It has a lot of different things, a lot of action to it. And, I like more action and the twists and the turns and the drops than I do, how tall it is. That's irrelevant once you leave that first point there.
Yeah, I
It's
can.
the rest of the ride that matters.
I agree. I've also never been on a single rail. There really isn't one in our market, but there's only a handful of them out there. Um, California's Great America, Six Flags, Fiesta Texas has one. Um, Obviously, Jersey Devil, and then this one are the 4 that come to mind. There might be some more. I've always heard positive things. I know that when the first 2 opened, there was some comfort issues with the over-the-shoulder restraints, which they were replaced within the first weekend, and now that's been resolved. So I've heard just amazing things about it. It's got to be a weird sensation to straddle the track like that, though.
Well, it does. I mean, we've grown up in the era of the wood coasters and what we've seen with steel, but something like this, for you and I, brand new experience.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. Um, yeah,
All right, Ryan. Well, the golden tickets. Uh, that's going to return after a 2-year hiatus by Amusement Today. Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. They're going to host it. Um, it's, for me, I've been to several of the Amusement Today Golden Ticket Awards, and it really is like it's the Golden Globes, the Academy Awards of the amusement park industry. You see all of the different parks represented. The different suppliers are there. It's just a great event that they've done, and to see it come back after 2 years, and I'm really excited about that for Amusement Today. And it's great for the industry to see that as well coming back off the pandemic.
yeah, yeah, that's really exciting. It's going to be at Fiesta Texas, which we just mentioned, and the GM of that park is our friend Jeffrey Siebert, who's Kings Island, Americana, Coney Island, Cincinnati Mighty Ducks alum. So we've known him for quite a long time. And the article also mentions, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that they are opening a coaster soon, Doctor Diabolical's Cliffhanger. I don't think they have a release date, but they're testing it now, so it's got to be kind of soon. That's going to be a B&M dive coaster with the first ever beyond 90-degree drop. So that's going to be really exciting. But back to the golden tickets, though. Exciting to see it back. It would be difficult to have had the golden tickets during when you had the Busch parks didn't open their new attractions, and some were delayed and some were canceled and stuff. So this is the first completely normal year. So this will be a really good year to have
And
those
you
golden
didn't have
tickets.
travelers those 2 years either. The voters that make their way around all the parks and cast their vote. So you didn't have that either. So it's great. That's another sign that things are getting back to normal when you see this event taking place again in September.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Are you going to go to Texas?
I will not. We'll be preparing, here in Cincinnati with different things that I'll be working on, involved with. But it's a great event, and I'm just super excited for Amusement Today that they're able to to get back to normal and hosting this event. Excited for all the different parks that will be nominated for different categories. And excited for the suppliers out there that parks are now adding new attractions and things again, so they're back in business too. So it's just a great thing overall for everybody.
Yeah, it really is great news. I mentioned this, I think, in the last podcast, but I think we should do something for Golden Ticket Awards. We'll definitely have an episode dedicated to it, but we do have the ability to go live on YouTube. So maybe we'll do a live broadcast and have live reactions during it, during the actual telecast. So, anybody watching at home can watch along with us, and you know, we can react to it and maybe tweet at us. But hey, that's it for the news today, Don. We are getting this in right at an hour. It's not that hour and a half, Harry Potter length episode we did last time. But
no, but you and I get we get on these things when we just start talking and get off track and do that. But it's great that we kept it within an hour this time.
yeah, I really, for the special events thing, I had 5 questions for you. I think I asked you 15 because you say something and it sparks another question, But that's a good thing because that's a conversation. So so as a status update, Don, you were the only follower of our Twitter. We're up to 11 now, 2 of which are clearly spam. The rest are real. So to the 7 other people that followed us, thank you very much. That's at attractions_GRP. If you want to tweet us at us and any subject matter, any questions, any show ideas, we'd really appreciate it. That's at attractions_GRP. So if you want to follow the podcast, just search for the Attractions Group Podcast on YouTube. You may have noticed, those of you who have searched it, I'm starting to break it up into little snippets. So if you don't have over an hour to listen to us ramble on and on, you can listen to us ramble on and on for about 7 minutes at a time. So just
and ultimately about you, the listener. We want to hear what you're interested in terms of topics, questions you have. If you're interested in getting into the industry, how can we help you? What tips can we provide? So follow us on Twitter, ask us questions, and down the road we do want to have a little segment that we'll read 3, 4, 5 different tweets from you, and but to do that you got to follow us.
Yeah, at Attractions @Helbig_GRP. Yeah, if you tweeted us questions, we will answer them. I would say we'll probably, once we get to that point, maybe get like a actual email address, and you can send us questions if you want to, and we'll do like a mailbag episode like every once in a while, or whatever. That doesn't even have to be a full length episode. We could do, do a half-hour deal that's just mailbag stuff. But also, if you want to follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, just search for the Attractions Group: Apple, Spotify, Google, all those. So those of you who have followed us, we're really appreciative of the support that you've given us. We got more downloads of the last episode by far than the previous episode, so that means we're heading in the right direction. But once again, thank you so much. We're going to try to do this weekly, but as we discussed, I was out of town, so it was almost 2 weeks. But we'll be back at some point next week with another topic so we can discuss more of the industry insights. Any final thoughts, Don?
Nope. Just everybody get out there, visit the parks, and have fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again for listening to the Attractions Group podcast. I'm Ryan Suhr with my co-host Don Helbig. Have a great day.